Welcome, one and all. It's that time again. We're back for Total Football Talk. I'm your co-host, Drew Willingham, along with a very, 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 very special co-host. Again, for the seventh straight week, we have Mr. McCoffey and his special introduction. Welcome back, Mr. McCoffey, to Total Football Talk Extra.
I hope he meant special as in like a special coffee during Starbucks season or whatever, or Dunkin' Donuts, and not like I gotta wear a helmet kind of special.
No. Yeah, I would say seasonal coffee. I was thinking
Okay.
more along the lines of seasonal beverage, but
Yes.
adult beverage, like an Oktoberfest of some sort, like, Sam Adams and I. We have a great relationship this time of year, which, speaking of which, that reminds me, I got to go to the store tonight, brother, and pick up more of those Oktoberfest for the weekend because we've got some great football action this weekend. I'm so hyped because it is Friday for one, and you and I are here to talk mother-bothering football for one. Two, I am not at work right now. I am at fun here at the house talking football on a Friday, and I'm not on call this weekend, so I'm absolutely loving it today. But yes, more like seasonal adult beverages, not pumpkin spice BS. If people want to go after coffee, no. The closest thing we're getting to is Oktoberfest.
We're not basic white chicks.
No. That latte, cinnamon stick in your drink BS. We don't need that up in here. Who wants to have a cinnamon stick up in their drink? Get the father out of here. Yes, we've already gotten started with the shenanigans. But before we get started with football, let's keep the shenanigans going a little bit longer, and especially what we were just talking about. If you are a male, you are outside in this weather, 66 degrees here in Virginia. You're drinking coffee with a cinnamon stick in it. You are taking a big fat. The shenanigans begin. Welcome to the program. As we do have one comment, our man Sick Diggy is in the house, says, what in the Belgian waffles and Canadian turkey bacon? We're going to need a whole lot of maple syrup around here. A whole lot more of it, as I just headbutted my microphone and table. Holy crap. But yes, we are getting things rocking and rolling a little bit later than normal. My apologies. Had some personal things happen today, some professional things, and it pushed me back. Ryan McCarthy, as always, very understanding gentleman, as we are ready to rock and roll here with this show. We've got 4 games to recap from last week, 3 games to preview for this week. One of them starts tonight at 8 p.m. Oh, 7 p.m. tonight, actually. My apologies. So, with that being said, we have an 8 from last week and a 7 from this week. Let's go ahead and take it into the opening drive and sort all this mess out.
All right, let's go. We got trips, right? At 42, 989. On two. Ready? Ready.
And here with the opening drive, we're basically going to review this past week in football. It was an 8:30 game this past Friday night. Toronto Argonauts traveled to Winnipeg to take on the Blue Bombers. There were 2 Saturday games, one at 3 o'clock between the Edmonton Elks, who traveled to Calgary to take on the Stampeders. And then we had another one at 7 o'clock that night where the BC Lions traveled to Saskatchewan to take on the Rough Riders. Yes, sir. and then we have Sundays off because, of course, the NFL takes over the world on Sunday. So no Sunday games this past week. But we did have one this Monday at 1 o'clock between the Ottawa Redblacks and the Montreal Alouettes on Canadian Thanksgiving, which Ryan taught me about last week. Now, of course, I'd be naive to think for entire 37 years on this planet that there was no such thing as Canadian Thanksgiving. I knew it. Just didn't know when it was. But now I know. Second week of October, thanks to Mr. McCoffey right here. So now, with that being said, Thank you again. With that, we have it's here is 8 o'clock, but it's either 8 or 8:30. Who cares? Nobody was probably watching at kickoff anyway in Americas, but here and now they did watch at some point as they're going to learn what happened. During week 19, the Toronto Argonauts again traveled to Winnipeg, take on the Blue Bombers, and barely beat the Blue Bombers 14-11. The Blue Bombers, who have been a hot team this year, or at least the past month or so, they started off a little slow, but now they've picked it up. As you look at what Chad Kelly did for the Argonauts here, 203 passing yards with a touchdown, 9 carries for 33 yards. Kadeem Carey, 5 carries for 39 yards with 1 reception for 5 yards as well. Makai Polk, 4 receptions for 82 yards, along with David Ungerer's 2 receptions for 20 yards and a touchdown, were the spark that this team needed to get the scores in to make this happen with the 3-point win. The Argonauts defense, though, was probably, in my opinion, one of the biggest parts to this win. When you look at the fact of the pressure they were putting on the Blue Bombers, 7 sacks with an interception by a man who I will probably add to my names of butchering list, but I want to give it my best shot. Ryan McCarthy, you tell me how I do when I say Falarin or a Malade. I did it! Holy crap! I did it. I practiced that one earlier.
Yes.
I did. During our conference call, I was muted. I was saying the name like 16 times. I was saying Kool-Aid, lemonade, omelade, omelette-aid.
Marmalade.
Yes, marmalade was one of them too. I was saying some wild stuff. Okay. You know how people were sing in the shower?
Yeah.
I practice how I'm going to talk on a podcast on podcast day in the shower. So earlier, before the conference call, all that stuff that I was telling you about, I was actually practicing this name. Okay. So people, if I had the window up or whatever and could hear me, they're probably like, what the expletive is this guy doing? But I was practicing for this moment. I'm making that a short later. This is happening with marmalade, omelade, whatever the expletive it was. But back to the game right here, this Friday game. When you look at this team, definitely the defense was a big part of it. And then we got to look at, speaking of names that I butcher, okay, there was another one that I butchered throughout the previous 6 episodes and now episode 7 of Total Football Talk Extra, is we have Lirim Haralalu, who I don't know if I did it, but
okay, you did all right. You did all right.
Yes. Nice. It's better than Lirim. But Lirim had 2
or Lirim Aloha.
Lirim, also Lirim Honolulu.
Yes.
That was another one too. But he was 2 of 2 on the day for field goals, did contribute 7 points to that 14-point total. But a big part of this was he did have a 40-plus yard field goal of 1 of 44 yards. On the other side for the Blue Bombers, Zach Colaro struggled in this game, even though he did throw for 249 passing yards. He did have a turnover with an interception. He had 5 carries for 44 yards on the ground. Brady Oliveira had a kind of a quiet day in comparison to what he normally does. I mean, he did have a total of like 105 total all-purpose yards on the day, but as far as on the ground, he only had 12 carries for 64 yards, which I guess did help establish the run a little bit, but not quite enough in my opinion. He also did have 6 receptions for 41 yards in the air as well. Ontario Wilson, their number 1 receiver, was a little quiet, though, on the day. 4 receptions for 33 yards. And you look at Kenny Lawler, who had 6 receptions for 108 yards, besting Ontario Wilson. But at the same time, he did put numbers on the board. It just wasn't enough to get this team past, the Argonauts when they lose by 3 points. Looking at this game right here, I know you got a great in-depth analysis, especially within this league. What do you think when you see these 2 teams duke it out the way that they did this past Friday night?
You want to break up that special graphic that we talked about before in the green room? You've been playing during the regular show, the OG show.
Here it is.
We got 4 of these. That graph is going to be up here for a couple more segments here, folks. This was. Listen, I didn't get to watch the entire game. I had a recording to do last week with our friend the Snowman. Check out that episode.
It was a good episode. I meant to tell you about that in the green room.
Thank you very much. But I tuned in afterwards, and I looked at the score. I'm going, this can't be right. This can't be right. Really? 13-8 in the third quarter? What's going on here? What happened? What happened here? I know what happened. The defense happened. The Toronto Argonauts defense happened. All right. So they clinched a playoff spot last week on the back of the Hamilton Tiger Kitties' unfortunate loss, because they were still in the discussion for the playoffs, and they wound up losing their game against Winnipeg, who was on a roll at this point. We were still on the roll. They had an 8-game winning streak up until this point. And what did Toronto do? They didn't do much on offense, but their defense did the job. Their defense did the job to the tune of 7 sacks. And if I'm looking at the score line here, they only limited Winnipeg to 112 yards rushing and 249 yards passing, 322 net yards. And that was the story, that their defense took over. Their defense, for all the talk we talk about their offense, what Chad Kelly's been doing, what Kadeem Carey has been doing, their defense is starting to step it up at the right time. And this is against a Winnipeg Blue Bombers team whose offensive line, I called them dog. I gave them the dog of the week last week, or I think it was last week or week before. But this offensive line has been playing very well. They've been paving the road for Brady Oliveira to get over 100 yards in every, in the last couple of consecutive games. He leads the league in rushing, but this week they were, spoiler alert, they were snowflakes this week.
Ooh.
They were snowflakes this week. Brady Oliveira only had 64 yards on the ground. He'd been averaging over 100 over the last couple of weeks. They allowed 7 sacks to the Toronto Argonauts, who they're no slouches. They're no slouches on the pass rush. That's a good defensive pass rush team. They forced an interception at Zach Collaros. So that was the story. That was basically the story. They now, although Winnipeg led the time of possession with over 33 and a quarter minutes, they couldn't put points on the board. Or they couldn't put points on the board at the right time. And they also win the turnover battle. So if I'm seeing here correctly, 2 interceptions, 1 fumble, and I believe they also had a turnover on downs. Yep. Yeah. So 4 turnovers by Winnipeg. Yeah, this was Toronto's defense stepped it up, and now they're currently in the driver's seat for that second place in the East Division. And if Ottawa loses this week, and if they beat Ottawa this week, they secure second place. So they'll host a playoff game in the East semifinal against the same Ottawa Red Blacks. So defense stepping up at the right time. All Toronto has to do is make sure that they don't turn the ball over and have timely scoring, and they'll be in okay shape like they were in this game.
Spot on with that too. I mean, Toronto, they've struggled this year. When you think about their overall consistency, and it showed in this game as far as what they do offensively. Now, don't take it wrong; they are 9-7. There's a positive record. It's a lot better than what we've seen from like the Calgary Stampeders, the Edmonton Elks consistently, and the Hamilton Tiger Kitties. Even though 2 of those teams, the Elks had a decent run for a little bit after starting off the year absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
And even the Tiger Cats, had a 3-1 run until this past week. The overalls were working pretty good for them. But it's when you look at things as a whole, these teams have things to work on tremendously over the offseason. The Argonauts, they're not that far off. They're like a few pieces, like 2 or 3 pieces to add to the team, and they could be as dominant as the Alouettes have been for the majority of this season.
Right.
They could have a run like the Lions had in the first half of the year before injuries and some misplay by some, because Nathan Rourke has been off with that team. But here with the Argonauts, you look at the fact that they've gone through. You're muted.
I am.
It might have been a server, but you were. I saw you saying something, but
okay,
coming out.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say that's being kind to Nathan.
Yeah, I know. Yes, I'm practicing. Okay. I'm practicing. But with the Argonauts, they've gone through 3 different quarterbacks. They had 2 quarterbacks before they even got to Chad Kelly, the whole suspension and everything that you and I talked about several weeks ago when he first came back to the league. And there's been inconsistencies at the quarterback position. And I think those inconsistencies in the time away from the game hurt Chad Kelly a little bit to where he's starting to pick. You could see flashes in the pan. He's getting his stride. But then when he plays some decent teams like the Blue Bombers here, he's getting humbled a little bit. And that's exactly what I saw. Now, you can also say, when you look at the other side of the ball with Zach Collaros and the interception, that arguably is what cost them the game here. Because when you lose by 3 points, and that's the decisive factor is turnovers, and you're talking about what the defense is doing, forced fumbles, so on and so forth, that right there is a huge issue. And that's why if the Blue Bombers go into the playoffs playing like they did this past weekend, it's not going to work out for them in that first round. They are not going to make it to the Grey Cup. And we'll talk about some other teams here in a little bit, but this right here is definitely a huge question mark. Now, I will ask you to let the viewer know, because I honestly don't know this 100%, because this was the one thing I forgot to look up before we got started with the way this week went. Are they mathematically eliminated now, the Argos? They're not.
From the playoffs?
Are they in or are they out?
They're in.
They're in. Okay.
They're in. They're currently sitting in second place in the East Division. They're 1 point up on Ottawa for second place, and whoever wins this week is in the driver's seat for number 2.
Okay, so they still have a chance to get to 1 and get the home playoff game.
They still have a chance to get the home playoff game.
Okay, because all right, that was the one thing that I was kind of not sure of, because the question mark that I have, because if I'm looking at this right, 4 teams make the playoffs, 2 from each division, right?
It's well, this is the zany part about the CFL, because there's only 9.
It's about points.
It's about points. So if you have more points in the standings, that determines your seeding. And there's also instances where teams can cross over from one division to the other. We've seen that before. We've seen that recently in the CFL. We saw that in as most recently 2018, when Saskatchewan crossed over into the East, beat Montreal in the semifinal, and went to the East final and then played Toronto. And if they won, they would have been the East representative for the Grey Cup. It's really strange. The CFL is a lot different. I'm sorry, they beat Hamilton, not Hamilton or Ottawa. They beat in 2018. I'm trying to remember who, but it wasn't Montreal. Anyway, but yeah, it points determine playoff standing.
So the reason why I asked you that was because looking at the standings, it's pretty clear when you look at the East Division, how things are going to play out for that. The Alouettes and Argonauts at the top, they're like locked in for the playoffs, right?
Yep. Well,
when you look at the West Division, you have the Blue Bombers, who are at 10-7, the Rough Riders, who are at 9-7, the Lions, who are at 8-9. The Rough Riders secured their home playoff with their win this past weekend, as that's the title of our program in the graphic and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Because of their points, they got 466 points up. Now, the Blue Bombers are at 10-7. The Lions are at 8-9. The Lions have 421 in points in comparison to the Blue Bombers 419. So if the season ended today, would the Lions be in over the Blue Bombers at the 2 seed?
No. BC is assured of so it's for it's not points scored, it's points for win and for ties. So you get 2 points you get 2 points for a win, 1 point for a tie. So BC they're locked in for third place no matter what happens on Saturday. Whether they beat Montreal or they lose to Montreal, they're sitting at 16 points. They could finish with 18 points or 17 points, depending on a win or a tie. No matter what happens, they're going to be behind Saskatchewan. And Saskatchewan's still fighting for first place. They could win first place. They could still win first place. Now Winnipeg and Saskatchewan, they have a bye week this week. So if Saskatchewan wins next week and Winnipeg loses in Montreal, I think Saskatchewan's playing Calgary. So they have the easiest path to get to win first place in the West and get the home playoff game for the final. But they have to depend on Winnipeg to lose in Montreal, and Saskatchewan would wind up with 21 points. Winnipeg would wind up with 20. So next week's going to be huge for both teams. But right now it's fait accompli for the West. It's just the top two seeds are the ones that are still being played out. The same with the East, where 2 and 3 are still being figured out as well.
See, I'm not sure throughout that take if you were catching it, but I was pulling an angry gremlin. I was stroking the beard, and that means when that happens, I've got a great idea formulating and populating upstairs, manifesting. We will talk about it in the green room after the show and get your thoughts on it before I announce to the public, because it all circles around what you just said and something that I might have up here to create. With that being said, this game right here, Argonauts still have a chance to make a run.
Mm-hmm.
The other team, the Blue Bombers, still have a chance to make a run.
Mm-hmm.
And the two of them right here are in opposite divisions before we move to our next game. Do you think there's a chance we can see these two teams face off in the Grey Cup?
Sure.
You think so, really?
I think so. I mean, last year, Montreal rode a hot streak all the way to the Grey Cup and won the Grey Cup. And it continued into this season. So if Toronto gets hot at the right time, they could certainly make their way into. We could see them in Vancouver on November 17th.
Okay,
absolutely they do. And Winnipeg, same thing. I certainly in week 2 when we talked about them starting off rather inauspiciously, going 0-4 in their first 4 games, everybody was counting them out. Everybody was saying the dynasty's over. Dynasty ain't over. They've gone to 4 straight Grey Cups. They've won 2 of them, but they've gone to 4. They've represented the West in 4 consecutive Grey Cups. They've done it for a reason. And this team still continues to play the same way they've played. Aggressive defense, hard-hitting defense, punch you in the mouth offensively, punch you in the mouth on offense by grinding you down with the run game and having opportunistic in the pass, being opportunistic in the passing game. So yeah, these two teams can certainly meet in Vancouver on November 17th.
And it would be a very interesting to see that, especially with the things we've said throughout the season on both of these teams, especially when you look back on my take in the beginning of the season. That will age well if they make it to the actual to the Grey Cup. And I'm being very, very facetious when I say that. Ladies and gentlemen, that was our Friday game. And now let's take it to our Saturday games. So we had 2 Saturday games this past week. We had a 3 o'clock and a 7 o'clock game. We started off with the game that we will talk about right here, being our 3 o'clock contest between the Calgary Stampeders, who hosted the Edmonton Elks. And the Elks came in here. You know, they've had a very, very dumpster Pelican-esque season, scored 25 points to another team who has had a very, very dumpster Pelican-esque season right here. And the Calgary Stampeders' Week 19 contest was absolutely horrible to watch. Not in comparison to the last game, and not in comparison to another game that we'll talk about, because the game of the week got the default pick because of what it represented in the result of the win. But right here with this contest, when you look at the Edmonton Elks and the Calgary Stampeders, Trey Ford, quarterback for the Elks, puts up 208 passing yards with a touchdown and not 1, but 2 interceptions. Yeah, look at Justin Rankin, who had 10 carries for 140 yards, definitely establishing the run very well with those 10 carries on the day. Geno Lewis had 1 carry for 15 yards and a touchdown, along with 6 receptions for 46 yards and a receiving touchdown as well, catching the 2 major touchdowns of the day for the Elkamos and getting it to the point to where this team won the game. The Elks defense also was big in this one as well. 5 sacks with the interception, that being by Sean Oakman, When you look at the other side for the Stampeders, a man who I was talking about last week who was drinking too much of the Schlitz, and that being Matthew Schultz. If you take the L out of there, we're having a grand old time with that name right there. You look at him, 215 passing yards on the day with a touchdown and an interception. The interception is definitely a big impactful moment, as this could have been an even closer game had he not turned the ball over. He also had 5 carries for 64 yards. He was not Schultzing it up in this game in a negative manner, except for that interception. Dedrick Mills, however, was drinking the Schlitz this week when you look at the fact that he had 7 carries for 36 yards on the day. Also, Reggie Begelton had 5 receptions for 79 yards, still is the number 1 receiver for this Calgary Stampede team, but it's not enough to help them get over the hump and get the victory as they fall to 4-11-1. The Stampeders defense, though, puts up 2 sacks on the day, 2 interceptions, one by Clarence Hicks, and the other by Demario Houston, who's had multiple interceptions this year as well. When you look at this game, the Toilet Bowl, as we speak, the Dumpster Pelican Bowl, the absolutely terrible game to mother, fathering watch right here. What are your thoughts looking back at the Saturday contest from Saturday?
Hit that button again.
I had to find it. I had to remember where I put it.
Have it queued up. We're going to use it again.
I'm moving it up to the top right now.
There you go.
Might as well just click it one more time.
Yet another bowling shoot ugly game between these two teams. When we previewed them last week, I said, "Do we have to?" Yes, we had to, and I did not witness this game. I was traveling that day. I had an appointment downstate New York, and then kind of hung out in northern New Jersey for a little bit. So I was preoccupied, not listening to this game, not wanting to listen to this game because I didn't care, and apparently neither did most of the people at McMahon Stadium. But here's the thing. So what made the difference in this game was the huge second quarter. Edmonton scored 16 points in the second quarter. A touchdown by Trey Ford, touchdown by Geno Lewis. Look at the stats for this game. Edmonton had 201 rushing yards. They also had 5 sacks. Where was this team in week 16, in week 17, and in week 18? Week 16 and 17, when they had to play Winnipeg back-to-back, and they would still be in the playoff conversation. But unfortunately, they played a team who was having a uncharacteristically bad season. Calgary does not have this type of season, especially over the last 2 decades. And even with the new quarterback in there, they still the same result. Turnovers, sacks allowed, decent rushing game. I mean, 134 yards rushing. Dedrick Mills having only 36 of them. Reggie Begelton. I'm sorry. Let me go back to my player stats here for Calgary. I mean, Matthew Schultz was the leading rusher in this game for the Stampeders. So no matter who you threw in at quarterback this year for Calgary, whether it be Matthew Schultz, who's a CFL veteran, he's bounced around the league for quite a few years, or Jake Mayer, or Logan, can't remember his last name, Logan Bonner. It didn't matter. This is just a bad season for the Calgary Stampeders, and it's it might be time to blow it up and rebuild. Free agency is going to be huge for Calgary this year because you got a couple of quarterbacks who are going to be big market names. Vernon Adams Jr. being one of them. He's going to be demanding. I suspect he'll be demanding big money. We'll talk about Vernon Adams. Foreshadowing. We're foreshadowing about Vernon Adams Jr. But he's got an audition for free agency this coming Saturday. Yeah. So the big difference was that second quarter. 16 points scored by the Elks, It was 17-5 by the end of the third quarter, and I was like, and if you're watching this game on TSN or CTV, whichever, or CFL Plus, I wouldn't say you had a gun to your mouth, but you're questioning your life decisions at that point. You're questioning your life decisions. Why did I say it? Why did I watch this game? Like, there's other things I could be doing at this point. But Calgary, gotta give credit. They didn't give up. They didn't give up. They actually had a chance to win the game on the last play of the game, but a pass by Schultz going into the end zone for Reggie Begelton was overthrown. And there we are. Edmonton winds up winning, and Calgary pretty much assured themselves of the number one pick in the CFL draft in, I believe it's April or May. I'll double check on that, but yeah, they've assured themselves of the number one pick in the CFL draft, and they'll be looking to possibly rebuild. I don't know what the future holds for Dave Dickinson, whether he'll be head coach or GM at the end of this year, because he assumes both duties right now. So we don't know if he's going to leave the coaching position. He's been he's reportedly been very snippy towards the media in the last couple weeks. I understand, given the season that they've had, 4 wins in 17 games. It's not going to cut it in that market. So we'll see what happens at the end of the season with his future, whether he'll be coach or he'll just coach and GM, or he'll just have the one duty as GM and they'll hire a new head coach, might promote their special teams guy. We don't know. I'm just speculating right now, but we'll find out after next week when they face Saskatchewan. And they're mercifully end their season, because I'm tired of watching them. And I don't know what the team record is for turnovers, but every week I look and I see an interception, fumble, turnover on downs. It's ugly. It's ugly. If you want to play that graphic one more time, you're more than welcome to, Drew.
So bad. It is so bad. It is
red. They're red and black, which are the team colors of Saskatchewan.
Bro, it's so bad. It's
terrible.
But you know, I do have to say, you were saying, you know, people contemplating life decisions with having this game on.
Yeah.
This past Saturday, I was listening to it. I had it on my phone, you know, through the app, and you know, where you could literally watch it. But I was working on one of my cars. You know, I was trying to get some things done because we had some decent weather this past weekend. We got some decent weather this weekend too. Try taking advantage of some preventive maintenance things before the winter comes, because it's going to be here before you know it. And I was listening to this game, and it wasn't quite as bad as the NFL game last night between the Broncos and the Saints.
Oof.
But it was still like, if I didn't have grease all over my hands, I would have probably done something I wouldn't have wanted to do, just because of how bad it was listening to this game. I would have picked up the phone and probably thrown it maybe. And for some reason, I mean, even when you're picking up stuff and being mad, you don't really care about grease in your hands. But apparently I still had the wherewithal to not grab it because I had grease in my hands. So the game didn't get to me as bad. But with that being said, that's because I wasn't watching it. I was listening to it. So not there it is. But yes, getting ready for John Cena, as he'll be back here soon, WWE, as we are WWE. Yes, as we are wrestling fans up in this show. And speaking of which,
2025 farewell tour.
Speaking of which, because I just did the whole hop, skip, and a jump, we just talked wrestling. We have a wrestling show that is starting up tomorrow. It is not me this time. I've done my fair share of wrestling shows, been a guest on one. I'll probably be a guest on this at some point. But debuting tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on Sartoba Media is The Grind, starring Corey Mann. And you will see, you know, inside news between all major professional platforms. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to his take on all things of professional wrestling, as I just found an opening to bring it in there. But that's the best thing we have to talk about within this game, is a promotion for somebody else, because this game was absolutely terrible when looking back on it.
Yeah. And I just noticed the number one scouting, according to CFL Prospects Scouting, the number one ranking for players who are eligible for the CFL draft? Curtis Rourke.
Nathan Rourke?
Nathan Rourke's brother. Plays for the University of Indiana currently. He's the number one prospect in the CFL, according to CFL scouting.
Well, speaking of saying what's up to everybody, because Curtis will say what's up to you when we see you get into the league. Josiah Elleron.
Hey, brother Josiah, what's going on, buddy?
Is that on your channel right there?
On my channel. That's no credentials required.
Nice.
Yep.
Nice. Well, shout out to you for tuning in to our show, Total Football Talk Extra. We have on Fridays. This is episode 7 for the 7th consecutive week.
Woo!
You can check it out here between Ryan's channel, or if you want to check out some other products on Sartoba Media, we have stuff going through all week, as well as when Ryan joins us on Friday. So definitely give us a shout out if you see what you like, or if you like what you see, as I should say. Speaking of other comments that we have here, a cinnamon stick. I'd rather have some cinnamon sprinkled on my French toast, says Sick Dick.
You know what would be really great right now? A bowl of Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
Damn, that would be good right now. That's good. No, we'll leave that out of here.
You know what? I will say this. If I ever were to have the chance to work with a Canadian Football League CFL team, whether as a broadcaster or a content creator, and our team won the Grey Cup, and I got my day with the Grey Cup, I would eat Cinnamon Toast Crunch out of the Grey Cup.
10 years ago, I'd probably drink beer out of it. Okay. But I kind of like this whole Cinnamon Toast Crunch theory that you have going on right now. I would second that, but not at the same time, though. We'd have to do it individual times.
Yes.
You have your moment with the Cinnamon Toast Crunch. We'll wash it out, give it on over. Then I will pour some Cinnamon Toast Crunch in there. Because you might like different milk in yours than I do. We could have another type of conversation about milk in a cereal based on that. But yeah, Cinnamon Toast Crunch in the trophy sounds great to me. Now, indeed, it was bowling shoe ugly, but the attempt at the 7-10 split couldn't save their blushes, as the Brits would say.
Look that term up. Save their blushes.
Because you brought up the 7-10 split. I give you bowling shoe ugly. And another comment by Six says, Ryan McCarthy, that was brilliant, talking about the Cinnamon Toast Crunch. So absolutely spot on. Still have 2 more games to review, and we got one more Saturday game. Let's go ahead and take it into the next one. And Saturday, 7 p.m. Oh, actually, I skipped ahead. We don't want to do that one yet. We will come back to that Saturday game.
I gotta do that. I gotta do this in memory of Kimmy Matumbo. No.
All right, let's get to the right game here. Ottawa Red Blacks travel to Montreal to take on the Alouettes. Alouettes win this game 19-12 at home in this Week 19 contest. Got to take a look at the fact that Davis Alexander had 208 passing yards and an interception and still led this team to a victory. And that is all part on what he did with his legs, as he had 6 carries for 45 yards on the day. Then we look at Walter Fletcher. Did not have a Walter Fletcher type day. He had 10 carries for 37 yards on the ground. He also did put up 2 receptions for 45 yards, but we're used to seeing more production out of him on the ground. Not Tyrone Alizé Mack dummy, not Alizé Mack, but Austin Mack shows up as the receiver for the Alouettes. 4 receptions for 92 yards, along with Kyle Speaker showing up as well with 3 receptions for 25 yards on the day. Alouettes defense put up 3 sacks with an interception by Wes Sutton, which definitely helped them out getting this victory. But the big part of getting this victory came on the leg of Jose Maltos, who was 4 of 4 on field goals with a long of 47 yards. Looking at the other side with the Red Blacks, Jeremiah Masoli, who has been struggling since taking over the quarterback duties for this team, 216 passing yards with an interception, along with 1 carry for 9 yards. Kalen LeBourne, 10 carries for 55 yards, along with two receptions for 19 yards. And you look at the Red Blacks defense, this being a part of why this game was as close as it was by a one-score game. 4 sacks with an interception, and that interception being by Damon Webb, who's got multiple interceptions throughout this 2024 season. When you look at this game, I know the Alouettes have had one great year, but is this win more so on the shoulders of the Alouettes doing what we're accustomed to seeing them doing in 2024? Or is this another version of the Red Blacks absolutely messing up their season after what we saw the first half from them?
Hit me again, Drew.
Uh-oh. Got it!
Look, the shoes are red and black, just like the Red Blacks. This was a case of Ottawa shooting themselves in the foot all game long. And I'll tell you why. Penalties. 12 penalties for 122 yards. And I watched that Monday night game between my New York Jets and the Buffalo Bills later that night. I couldn't, between the Bills, the Jets, and the Red Blacks, I couldn't tell which team was less disciplined. And they had a lot of these penalties in the first half, too. This was an ugly game because it was a rainy day. Cody Fajardo was out of the lineup, not because of injury, because of the birth of his new daughter. Congratulations to Mr. Fajardo on your new daughter. He'll be back in the lineup this week against BC. Davis Alexander has filled in pretty well, but the weather's going to play a factor in this game. It's pouring rain. It was up here in the Northeast. It was a rainy weekend between Sunday and Monday, and Montreal, no exception. That they get the same type of weather that we usually do because where I live in New York State, we're directly, I would say, to the same parallel the same as the city of Montreal. So they had to deal with the weather. So it was just an ugly matchup. It was just an ugly game, and this for Canadian Thanksgiving game. So while they're trying not to choke on their turkey, they're watching. Canadians are trying to digest their turkey. They're watching this game, and unfortunately, it just turned out to be a low-scoring affair. Defense played very well by both teams. Jeremiah Masoli having a halfway decent game, but not a great game. But this was a penalty-filled game for Ottawa, and that's gonna. This if there's one game that's going to be that they needed to win, it was this game because Toronto leapfrogged them in the standings. They've had a hot start to this season, had an absolutely hot start to the season, and over the last month or so, this team has not been very good. And in a must-win, they're shooting themselves in the foot with penalty after penalty after penalty, whether it be on the defensive side of the ball or the offensive side of the ball. They had a chance to take the lead in the third quarter. They got inside Montreal's territory. And then they committed. One of their brilliant rookie receivers commits a penalty for objectionable conduct because he threw a ball at the Alouettes at the feet of the Alouettes defender, which at first glance you're going, that's not such a harmful penalty because he's not really throwing. He's not trying to deliberately throw the ball. He's just celebrating. But the way it happened to land, it's like, all right, kid, you got to take it down a bit, and you got taken out of the lineup and didn't play the rest of the series. And what could have been a lead, because they were at that point they were at the 2-yard line. They were Montreal's 2-yard line. They would have had 3 chances to take a crack at the end zone. Instead, they get backed up 10 yards, and 2 incomplete passes becomes a field goal. And that's basically the game. Was just both, like I said, both defenses were playing pretty solidly. 3 sacks for Montreal, 4 sacks for Ottawa. But penalties, man, you got to be more disciplined, especially in a must-win game when you could have taken the lead in the standings. You could have taken the lead, and basically, if you win this week, you assure yourself a home playoff game in the first round, the East semifinal. Instead, you got to play a must win on Saturday afternoon against your provincial rival in Toronto. And the way that this Ottawa Red Blacks season has kind of downward spiraled after a hot start is very disappointing, because I expected, I said at the beginning of the season, I said, I think Ottawa could finally take the leap after being out of the playoffs for so long.
You did.
But injuries and now discipline, and now lack of discipline has been the primary factor of their downward spiral over the past month. So this was that, this game could have been a lot worse. I mean, but also could have been an absolutely shocking decision, because Montreal, they play pretty well at home. There's a sold out crowd at Percival Molson Stadium. But this was a disappointing result, and they could have. This was a must win. They had to have this game, and they blew it.
They did, and it's looking at how things were going for this team this year. It was definitely, it's been kind of a shell-shocking surprise. We're talking about how the Red Blacks were, the first start of this year, and then watching them fall off, and we were having them in the same conversation as we had with the Rough Riders for a little bit. The Rough Riders finally turning things around over the past 4 weeks, and 3-1 in the past 4 games to get to where they're at now, and there's been other teams that, like the Red Blacks, who 3-1 or 0-4, whatever the case may be. In these times,
they've lost their last 4. They lost the last 4 in a row. Yeah.
Yes, I was saying, where they're in the conversation of teams that are 0-3-1 or 0-4. Like in the past month, this past month has been a make or break month for many teams. You look at the Blue Bombers, you look at the Rough Riders. The Alouettes have been the only consistent team throughout the 2024 season where, from start to now, we haven't really been talking about the fact that they are going to fall off, that we don't see them having a chance to make it to the Grey Cup. They're still getting exposed in certain ways, but they're still finding ways to win. They are literally the Kansas City Chiefs of the CFL. They're not undefeated, but they're still finding ways to win these impactful games some way, somehow, when you're just about to count them out.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And this is why Jason Moss is in the conversation for Coach of the Year, at least in the East, based on how the Montreal Alouettes have played this year.
And speaking of Canadian questions, how long is the drive between Ottawa, Ontario, and Montreal, Quebec there, Ryan McCarthy?
If I remember correctly, it's about 2 hours.
Okay.
I'll double check. Never hurts to double check.
That's a lot less of a drive than I'm going to have next week when I go to the Commies game.
Yep, 2 hours, 2 hours and 18 minutes.
That's not bad at all. It's not bad.
No, it's like a trip to the Catskills for me.
There you go. And you're still not that far from Canasta, Canada anyway. So right here and now.
Actually, that's about 2 hours. That's about a trip from here to from where I live to the border. It's about 2.5 hours. Then another hour up to Montreal. So, yeah, it's same trip from my house to the border.
Very interesting, my man. Now, finally, I get to click this button as we finally get to go to the game of the week, which happened to be another one of these. And that was this game right here that wins it by default. Fact of, yes, it was a 39-8 routing, but what happened as a result of this win for the Saskatchewan Roughriders, when you look at the title of our show today, the Roughriders destroy the Lions to clinch the home playoff game, because the other 3 games were so horrible. I just felt like this was the better pick because of the results that came from it. And the stat line that came from it as well. When you look at the offense and the defense, it's a little bit more interesting. People that like hard-hitting gridiron action, as we like to say here with Total Football Talk, definitely would be fans of this when you go over the stat line here. Trevor Harris, 271 passing yards on this day with 2 touchdowns. AJ Alouette finally is back and making an impact for this team. You look at what he did. 16 carries. With that, he established the run. He also musters up 84 yards on the day because of those 16 carries. He did have two receptions for 7 yards, which isn't all that great, but he's a running back, so he's not primarily getting paid to catch the ball. So overall, 91 overall purpose yards on the day, and being a part of 18 plays, I'd say they got their money's worth when they get this win in this fashion right here. Samuel Emilus still stays big with this receiving core with the receptions that he had. 6 of those on the day for 94 yards. Jareth Stearns, 6 receptions for 60 yards and a touchdown. The Rough Riders defense had 1 sack on the day, 2 interceptions, one of them being by Junior Allen and CJ Avery. And then you look at the field goal kicker, the kicker right here. He made the biggest impact on the day, in my opinion, when you look at the fact that he had 6 field goals out of 6 attempts and a long of 53 yards, helping this team score up to 39 points collectively as a unit on this day. We just talked about the Lions earlier. We talked about this man's brother earlier. And now we're going to talk about him and his dumpster pelican expletive. And that is Nathan Rourke. Okay. Third string quarterback for this team. Puts up 200 passing yards, 2 interceptions, along with 1 carry for 5 yards on the day. Look at the running back, William Stanback, who definitely was quiet on the day in comparison to what he's done this season. He had 8 carries for 35 yards, along with 3 receptions for 30 yards on the day. The one highlight for this team was Justin McInnis, 6 receptions for 119 yards, and Aiden Eberhardt, 4 receptions for 44 yards on the day as well. I know that normally we would not be reviewing this type of game as the game of the week, normally in most circumstances, but in comparison to the other games, like I said, we had to put it here. What is your biggest takeaways from this game as to why it should be the game of the week?
I think it's just based on the performance of the defense by the Saskatchewan. Sorry, let me say it right. Your Saskatchewan Riders.
Yes! You picked up on it. I left it open for you to do it.
50 yards allowed rushing. 50 yards rushing allowed by the Saskatchewan Rough Riders. They've been pretty. Look, they've gotten their act together since they went in the bye week. Had that slide. Now they get their act together in the bye week. Whatever head coach Corey May said to them, they get them to snap back into action, snap back into playing the way they've been playing over the last 3 weeks. It's worked. And now they've earned themselves a home playoff game. At the very least, they earned themselves a Western semifinal, and now they have a chance, as we talked about earlier, they have a chance to capture first place and have a bye for the Western final where you can heal more, where you can get yourself together more to whoever you play in the final. So you just gotta have a couple. You just have to have Winnipeg lose to Montreal next week, and you have to beat Calgary, and you have to beat Calgary, which was, as we've talked about, Calgary, sweet merciful death is waiting for them. And by that I mean like just the season ending, not like actual death. I mean, I don't want anything bad to happen to that team. But you look at the stats, and right off the bat, in that first series of the game, it's a pick 6. If you watch the highlights of that game, the second pass of the game, Rourke is trying to hit Stanback out in the flat, and Stanback can't get a hold of it. The ball bounces around like, I think, 8-9 times. Finally lands in the arms or the hands of Junior Allen, who takes it back for a touchdown. And that pretty much told you what's going to happen, what was going to happen for the entire game for this BC Lions team. And that's what has. Hey, look, the Saskatchewan, they ran the ball well, which I've said, you got to get the running game going again. AJ Ouellette, 84 yards, but they also protected the football. No turnovers, no interceptions, no fumbles surrendered, and no turnovers on downs. While on the other side of the ball, BC had 6 turnovers, 1 fumble lost, 2 interceptions by Nathan Rourke, 3 turnovers on downs because they got so far behind By halftime, they were down 26-8. And the rest of the game, and then they were absolutely skunked the rest of the way. It got so bad they had to bring in their third stringer, Chase Bryce, who didn't really fare as much as well as Nathan Rourke did, because this defense for the Saskatchewan Roughriders was playing lights out this game. And that was the difference. That was the biggest difference, was just the defense showed up for the Alouettes, or for the Roughriders, and they protected the football. They led the turnover battle 6-0. They protected the football. The defense played lights out. The defense played really well. The offense took advantage of opportunities. I'd like to see them get in the end zone a lot more. Yes, I like the fact that Brett, mother, father, and Lothar got 6 for 6 on field goals. But I would like to see them take more shots in the end zone, try to get, because you got yourselves one of the best quarterbacks in this era, in Trevor Harris. You brought him in for a reason. You brought him in to win a Grey Cup. Now you get the opportunity. Let's see him hit the ball fly. Let's see him take. Get your best running back in there, AJ Ouellette, who, again, you also brought him in to win a Grey Cup too. I'm excited to see what this offense can do against Calgary next week, and hopefully for the playoffs. And I know you're probably going to ask me, does the Saskatchewan Roughriders have a chance to go to the Grey Cup? Yeah, absolutely do. And they got off to a great start this year. Had some growing pains in the middle, but after that bye week, like I said, they've had some chance to figure things out, and they're starting to hit their stride. It's starting to get back on their stride at the right time, and it showed in this game what turned out to be a pivotal matchup for playoff positioning. But they humbled the BC Lions in this game, absolutely humbled them, and we're seeing what another team, the BC Lions, got off to a hot start this year, like Ottawa did. They've won. Take a guess of how many games they won in the last 3 months. BC Lions. The BC Lions. The last 3 months, how many games have they won? 3.
It was a wild guess. I was thinking, I was like, but I was going back to the past few weeks thinking about it. I was like, they can't have won more than like 3 games.
They've won 3 games in 3 months.
Wow.
After that start that they had, we were talking about Vernon Adams Jr. being an MVP candidate. And then he gets hurt, and things have gone decisively south for the downward spiral. Like Ottawa, it's just been an absolute train wreck. And this is the year that they went all in. They bring Nathan Rourke back. They bring Matthew Betts back after his time in the NFL. They violated the cap, which, no big deal. They're gonna make that up for Grey Cup anyway. They're gonna make all that money back. They have to pay the CFL for cap violations, but that's not gonna matter. But you went all in to guarantee yourself possibly hosting the Grey Cup. And this season has not gone the way that you have hoped it has gone.
It's definitely frustrating when you think about how you start a season and then you get to this point where you have 3 wins inside of 3 months. It has been absolutely rough to watch this, especially when you go against a team known as the Rough Riders. I was waiting as long as I could to get it in there. And like I said, I set it up for Ryan McCoffey to have his Rough Riders moment. He had his, and now I get to have mine. I, as admittedly so, a bandwagon fan of the Saskatchewan Roughriders earlier in this season, as I had to pick a team.
It's okay. That's okay.
You have to pick a team, all right? Because, I mean, I will admit, I've watched CFL at times throughout the years, but I have been the most invested in it this season out of any other season in my life. And I was like, I'm thinking about every sport that I've ever been invested into, whether as a fan or in the media, and I have a team. And I was like, I cannot, even though there's only 9 teams in this league, I have to have a team. And I'm like looking at the names. And this is before the season even started, because before we started talking about them on the other show on Total Football Talk, I was like, You got to look at the names, the uniforms, the way they come into the game, everything. The Rough Riders are just the epitome of a team that I wanted to follow. And it makes me happy that by the end of it, they finally got things together to where we can start talking about them and making a run for the playoffs, because there was a small period of time where you and I were right here, whether it's the other show or here, and we were talking about the fact that this team, it's falling apart for them. It's not looking good for them. They might not even make it to the playoffs to even contend for the Grey Cup, and here we are. So definitely a great spot for them to be in, spot for us to be in to cover it. And we've got many more things to discuss throughout the remaining weeks of the season and into the playoffs. But now it is time that we take this on into our grand champ of the week and talk about our dog of the week and our choice for this week's grand champ.
All right, let's go. We got trips, right? At 42, 989 on 2. Ready? Break!
Total Football Talk Extra.
Where my dogs at? One's right over here. That's Ryan McCoffey. The other part is what we're going to list.
One's over there with Drew Willingham.
There it is. Now, with that being said, Mr. McCoffey, who is your choice this week for your dog of the week?
My dog of the week is the Toronto Argonauts defense. 7 sacks, one turnover. Actually, technically two turnovers, because they had the big stop on third down with less than a minute to go in the game. That killed, actually brought the drive for the Bombers to a stop. They were looking to get the game-winning touchdown or the game-tying field goal to take the game to overtime, but all game long they were harassing Zach Collaros. And I had talked about, again, early in the show, I talked about how the Blue Bombers offensive line was outstanding, doing a great job paving the way for Brady Oliveira. They couldn't do much on the ground this past week, and the defense of the Argonauts were racking up them sacks, and to see the score line as it was, being fairly shocking. I mean, they shocked the Blue Bombers to the point where I was listening to the game on TuneIn, because you can listen to the games on select stations, and they basically shut the mouth of head coach Mike O'Shea of Winnipeg, because you could tell during the post game interview that he was all sorts of frustrated because their team had been on a roll, 8-game winning streak, and they played a very, I would say, I wouldn't say necessarily a desperate team in Toronto, but a team that had an opportunity to take control of their destiny in the eastern part of the playoff bracket. And Toronto came up big. They didn't have to do much on offense. Chad Kelly had a quiet day. Kadeem Carey also had a quiet day. It was a defensive struggle. And Toronto's defense outplayed Winnipeg's defense to the tune of 7 sacks. And that's I'm going to give my grand champ, my dog of the week, to the Toronto Argonauts defensive unit. So outstanding job.
Nice. I support your message right there when you go with the defensive unit, because, we look at defenses and their impact on games. Toronto's defense with the 7 sacks and the interception was absolutely huge in why they were able to pull this game off right here. As much as I respect the choice, I'm going to go away from defense for this pick, and I'm going to go to special teams, and especially with how it impacted this game and how it impacted a home playoff game for this team in the Saskatchewan Roughriders.
There it is.
Knew it was coming. I had to do it one more time at least because this upcoming week they're on bye, so I don't have that much more time to get energetic about this team. But I have to look at the kicker for what he did in this game. 6 of 6 on field goals. This is not the first time he's done this year. This is like the second time at least he's been 6 for 6 on field goals. Go look it up, people. I can't tell you the week, and I think it's the third time, to be honest. I know that there's at least one other time. It might be a 5 for 5 is the third time I'm thinking.
That was week 17 against Ottawa.
Okay, so there was one time
went 6 for 6 because Liram Hairola, who went 7 for 7 in the Toronto Montreal game, the next game.
Which is why, and it was ironic that shortly around that, it was around that time when it was a little bit before then when we had the Giants and the Commies 7 field goals to 6 in that week 2 contest between the two of them, and the Commies beat the Giants in the NFL. So that's why all this is still sticking upstairs, because I knew that he had another 6 field goal game, because it's hard to get even 4 or 5 like Jose Maltos did for his team. I think it was the Elkmos he plays for, and he had 4 on the day for what he did. No. I'm thinking of crap. Jose Maltos plays for the Alouettes. But he had 4. So thinking about that, it's like 6 field goals in a day. To make 6 field goals hard enough out of the same amount of attempts, out of 6 attempts, that's tough too. So right here now, I gotta say, when you have a kicker, they make 6 father and field goals out of 6 attempts is 100%. And he's done it multiple times in a season. You have to give it to him for your dog of the week, or at least me. And there might be a little bit of a homer pick here because it's the Saskatchewan Roughriders, okay? And yes, there's other parts of the team I could look and dissect and say, hey, this should be the dog of the week, but kickers don't get enough love, okay?
Nope.
And for 2, when you have a kicker that's putting up 18 points just in his own right by kicking field goals, and you win 39 and you score 3 other touchdowns after that, and that's pretty much it that makes the difference in the game, you have to give it up for him. He pretty much scored half of your points in the day, and he did it with a 100% kicking percentage. And it's not the first time he's done it this year. He did it in week 17, like Ryan said, and I'm willing to bet that he did it one other time this year. If not, it was like a 5 for 5 field goal day. Anyway, regardless, the fact that you did it once, you deserve the dog of the week. 2, his dog deserves a 1-year supply of kibble for free from his favorite place, because you take away the pressures of the dog owner, and he gets to go out there and probably do it one more time. And the next time I want to see it happen is in the Grey Cup, as he kicks 6 field goals to get the Saskatchewan Roughriders the 2024 CFL championship in the Grey Cup. That's what I want to see, and I'm trying to spark that up right here and now. If I can say what I said about the Winnipeg Blue Bombers earlier this year, and they can turn around every now and then, I get it. No, I'm not going that way right now, but they did it. And if they can do it, so can the Rough Riders. This is brought to you by Sertova Media, where the struggle is real to be mother-fathering awesome. Now back to the program, back to Ryan McCarthy, as he had a great take, and mine might have gone sideways. What do you think?
No, I agree. Look, on this program, we stand for special teams, right? I gave my Grand Champ Award to Jake Julian of the Edmonton Elks a few weeks back because of the fact that he was averaging nearly 60 yards a punt in one game. He does lead the CFL in punting yards per punt with almost 55 yards per punt. He's got a monster of a leg as a punter. And yeah, we're going to give love to the special teams. It's not just the offense and the defense that win games. It's also what you can do on special teams that also helps. Whether you're a field goal kicker, a punter, a returner, don't matter. We're going to give you love. We're going to give you love here on Total Football Talk Extra.
There it is. Now that we've gone through our dog of the week, it's time that we take it to our snowflake of the week.
Total Football Talk Extra.
Oh, yeah! It's that time for the Snowflake of the Week. With his choice of that Snowflake of the Week, we take it to Ryan McCarthy.
I'll give my snowflake of the week to the entire team of the Ottawa Red Blacks.
Oh!
And I'll tell you why. I mentioned it in our game, in this game. Penalties. Discipline. This team has lost their last 4 games in a row. Now, granted, they've been missing their number 1 quarterback, Drew Brown. They lost arguably their best defensive player in Darius Pickett. He's gone for the year. Drew Brown should be back this week, but as a collective, you have to have discipline. You must absolutely not. Penalties are a killer. Penalties are an absolute killer in football, whether it be in the NFL, the CFL, or other alternative leagues like the UFL, or Arena Football, or Arena Football 1 coming soon. But this team was in the first half, they had their chances. In the second half, they could have taken the lead or tied the game, and a penalty took away their chance to try to get 3 cracks at the end zone at the Montreal 2-yard line. And that was a killer. Instead of getting a touchdown and taking the lead, they wind up kicking a field goal. And this basically was a backbreak. That was a backbreaker for Ottawa because they couldn't do anything else on offense after that. So it goes both ways on offense and on defense. You can't commit too many penalties, because the more penalties that stack up against you, the less of a chance you are going to win a football game. And right now, you need all the games you can get. You need all the points you can get. Sure, you had that one tie against Saskatchewan early in the year, in July, August. I believe it was August. They had that tie, which granted you a point, but you need wins now. You need to win now. And Monday was a must win. And with all those penalties, you just threw it away. Actually, the referees threw it away for you because of all the flags they threw on the field, because you were committing so many penalties. You were super, and because your discipline was sloppy. You got to fix this. You got to fix this quick, or else your chances at not only a home playoff game, but also advancing in the playoffs is going to disappear very quickly.
Nice. So you give it to the entire Ottawa Red Blacks.
Mm-hmm.
Before I give my take, Sick Diggy says that's plenty of time for the Red Blacks to rethink their strategy at Ryan McCarthy when we were talking about them earlier. So there still is time. But I'm with you. Like, the entire team, it's not one position. It's like you look at the offensive line in comparison to the quarterback. Because, I mean, they've had their woes with the quarterback. We've gone around and round and round with it. Six not off with what his statement is here. They've got very, very little time. And they got to do it now.
Mm-hmm.
Right me out.
Right now.
Talk about a rough day at the office for the BC Lions. He said, ouch, as we were talking about with our game of the week before we got into our Snowflake and Dog of the Week picks. So I wanted to make sure I gave a little shout out to Sick before we go into our preview for week 20 here in a few minutes. But with that being said, for the Snowflake of the Week, Ryan, there's not many times. Usually I have a plan A and a plan B for my pick. And today, my plan A was a plan A, and that plan A was what you chose. So great choice for your pick in the Snowflake of the Week. So on the fly, I'm going to go ahead and pick somebody different for this pick right here. And, we talked about the Red Blacks. There's not enough statement here for the BC Lions. And, the BC Lions, with the way they started with Vernon Adams Jr., you talked about it earlier, where there's potential opportunity with free agency with him and finally getting another start somewhere else, because there's been several question marks. You and I have brought it up on this show when we first started it 7 weeks ago. We brought it up on Total Football Talk, the original show, and we were covering CFL before the NFL came back, and we were doing that with Cole the last couple of weeks of that. And now we're going to do it right here. The BC Lions, they started off this season on a mother-fathering tear. They were doing a great job. Many favorite picks to make a run in the playoffs in that first round and go to the Grey Cup, potentially maybe make some noise, okay? And part of that noise was coming from this show right here. Ever since that time, they have completely fallen off the map, and it all starts with the debacles that they have had with their quarterback position. They've gone through 3 different quarterbacks in the season. They have not had the same type of spark that they had when Vernon Adams Jr. was leading this charge the first month to 2 months of the season before whatever happened, whether it was small injury and there was such great quarterback play that he lost his job. No, that never came into fruition because QB2 and QB3 have not done their jobs well enough, in my opinion, for Vernon Adams Jr. to be persona non grata from his quarterback position, okay? If you're going to make a decision, you need to stick by it, yes, but there has to be validity to it. And a team that is 8-9 at this point in the season, a team that has been struggling throughout the past couple months, the past few months, when we just talked about earlier that you've only had 3 mother-fathering wins in the past 3 months. It's 12 weeks of gameplay. And you got 3 wins. You're winning 25%. What? You made the right choice of quarterback. The entire BC Lions team, offense primarily, because it is ran by the quarterback, the QB2, the QB3, the head coach, the guy who washes the towels, all of you over there for the BC Lions. You are my choice for the Snowflake of the Week because you have influence, guy who washes towels. You can put a note in that towel inside that locker of the coach on the desk. You wash the towel. You wash all of the towels. And you can put a note in there that says, please stop sucking. Please put a better choice of a quarterback in there. Please drop a better play in the sand so that way they have a better chance of winning and not winning 3 mother-fathering games inside of 3 months. Guy who washes towels, you suck too. You need to do a better job at slipping some notes in there because I know I would. You should too. And that's why all of you on the staff of the BC Lions are my choice for the Snowflake of the Week.
Well said.
You didn't think I was going to do it with the guy washing towels, though?
I give him a pass. Only because he washes towels. I mean, if he washes towels and he's, leaving them putting them in the washer and not putting them in the dryer, leaving them there for like a day or two and they're all mildewy and gross. Yeah, I'd have a problem with him then. But if he's doing an okay job, because usually the equipment guy gets so much crap, but they're another underrated part of the team.
I know, but I'm just saying, if he's doing a good job washing towels, that's great. But slip a note in there. You know where that towel is going to be at and what locker it's going to be in. Put it in there for Nathan Rourke. Hey, Nathan, retire. Hey, Vernon, step up. Coach, put Vernon in. Note from the towel guy. He's not qualified to make decisions, but he's qualified just like you and me to make suggestions.
And I'll tell you when this season started to downward spiral. It was in week number 9 when they were absolutely skunked by Winnipeg. That started Winnipeg's winning streak, and that started the losing ways for BC. That was when Vernon Adams Jr. got hurt. Actually, he got hurt in that game, and they put in I can't remember his first name, but I remember his last name is Dolagala. Then the next week, they signed Nathan Rourke and they released Dolagala. So, yeah, that was a rough one.
But still, the wild part of this whole situation is the fact they never put Vernon back in. They just completely turned the page with him, like he was washed up, and we were talking about him being an MVP candidate by the time he went down in week 9.
Yep.
And now looking at this, It's absolutely terrible. I mean, even Ike says the towel guy. I mean, he was jumping on this too. Thanks, Ike, for tuning in. I guess you tuned in at the right time. But yes, the towel guys who we were just talking about. But here and now, it's over for the Red Blacks. I don't care what they do for the next two weeks. Not the Red Blacks, the Lions. It is over for them. We don't have to worry about the fact that there's any potential opportunity for them to make the playoffs. Because I don't care what happens. I don't care what slight percentage, if there is one, they're not making it. Because they won't put Vernon back in. And they won't listen to the towel guy. So here we are. And 6 says, what about the Water Boys? Well, they don't have Bobby Boucher. Don't make me go in the other room and get the Bobby Boucher jersey. Okay. I will do it if I have to. Ryan McCarthy has seen me do it before too. And now
Gatorade.
Water sucks. It
really sucks.
Oh,
water sucks. It really sucks.
The towel guys and equipment crews are innocent. Leave them out of this, Drew Willingham. Well, I don't care. I'm sorry. They still contribute to the fact this team has taken way too many. With that being said, we're going to take this into our final segment of the program, and that being our transition into the 2-minute drill. I misspoke. We still have the post game.
Extra.
Don't worry, you'll still hear Cole say Total Football Talk Extra one more time in the program. Didn't mean to cut my man off, but we do have the post game. But with that being said, we have 3 games to cover for this one. It's a short one this week. We won't take too much time going through it, but we got to look at tonight's game. Just started, actually, between the Calgary Stampeders and the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Tonight at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. Who wins this game? Do you care? I don't care. It doesn't matter. Still got to pick a winner.
I'm hungry. I'm going to make it quick because I'm hungry. It's dinner time. Hamilton by 1 billion.
Hamilton by 1 billion.
Hypothetically speaking, I'm speaking in hyperbole, but yeah, Hamilton wins this game. Come on.
Hamilton let me down last week with our choice and the overalls and everything, and I'm going to pick out a spite and say that they lose and go with the Calgary Stampeders. That's my choice for the victor this week, even though I will probably be wrong.
Hey, who's giving them the business?
You're going with the dead horsies?
The Calgary Dead Horsies. Now, that is our game that just started now.
Yep.
We do have 3 teams on bye this week. The Edmonton Elks, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Now, the funny thing is just 5 weeks ago, we were just talking about these same teams being on bye. And now, here they are again. When it comes to Saturday, we do have 2 games this week. No Thanksgiving Day matchups in Canada, as that has passed. We have the Red Blacks traveling to Toronto to take on the Argonauts tomorrow at 3 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. Ryan, who wins this game?
You know, I was looking at the depth chart of the Ottawa Red Blacks. Drew Brown will be starting this game. That's going to make a huge difference for their offense. Jeremiah Masoli has not gotten the job done, but Drew Brown is back from injury. He's been the catalyst for this team offensively over the course of the year. He's played very well. He was also one guy I was thinking about him as a dark horse pick for most outstanding player, most valuable player, whichever you want to call it. Of the East Division. Right now, it seems to be in the Cody Fajardo's hands or Bo Levi Mitchell, because he's put up some really big numbers this year. It hasn't translated into wins, but he's had some really big numbers as kind of a resurgence in his career. But I see Toronto's defense and their performance last week against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and stopping that winning streak and doing it rather impressively. So This is a toss up. It's a really important game. It's a very important game because it determines playoff seeding, and Toronto has the edge right now. Toronto has the edge. If they win, they clinch the second spot. If Ottawa wins, they're in the driver's seat. Things need to happen next week. But all that being said, I think Toronto's defense has been playing. They played lights out this week. I think they continue that momentum this week, even with the new quarterback in for Ottawa. It's going to be a very close game. It could be a shootout. This could be a shootout game, but I think Toronto's defense is going to play the biggest difference. So I'm going to take the Argonauts in on Saturday's game, in the early game on Saturday.
I share similar sentiments based on what we've seen with the Toronto Argonauts defense and based on what we've seen with the demise of the Red Blacks. Not quite as bad, but in similar aspects as the BC Lions, not far off. They remind me of them in certain ways. And because of the way the defense of the Toronto Argonauts has stepped up in moments where they've really needed to, which is why they are 9-7 right now. I see them improving to 10-7, being the ones who are in clear control of their destiny into the playoffs. And I see the Red Blacks slipping away as we've seen them slip away since the first half when they were doing really well and the second half kind of falling apart. I'm going with the Red Blacks losing, falling to 8-1. The Argonauts winning, improving to 10-7, and one step closer to seeing something special in a playoff run.
Hey. Who's giving them the business?
And then with our final game tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, the 12-3-1 Alouettes travel to British Columbia to take on the underwhelmingly performing BC Lions, who are 8-9, and the team that Ryan said has only won, not one, not two, but 3 games in only 3 months, the previous 3 months. With that being said, who's your choice here? Do they improve to 9-9, that being the Dumpster Pelican team of the BC Lions and handing the Alouettes a loss, or do the Alouettes improve to 13-3-1?
Praise the Lord, we want to see the BC Lions in the regular season after this game.
Yeah!
Finally.
You know what? I'm going to have to give you a...
Yeah.
Thank you, Eli Drake. I mean, LA Knight. Sorry. I mean, this is interesting. This is a toss up for me too, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why it's a toss up. Because Montreal, over the past couple decades, they have not played well at BC Place. I don't know what it is about the mountain air of Vancouver, of the Cascades region. I don't know if it's because of the cross country trip you got to take from Montreal all the way out to the West Coast. Don't forget the last, I think one of those 3 wins in the last 3 months for the BC Lions is against this Montreal Alouettes team. And this was with Nathan Work in the lineup. However, this week will be Vernon Adams Jr. He'll be starting at quarterback this week for the BC Lions. If they win, I think they continue to roll with him. And they should have been rolling with him after Nathan Work got back. Even after Vernon Adams' ankle healed up, he should have gotten back into the lineup instead of Rick Campbell rolling with Nathan Work. We've seen what happens when Nathan Work's in the lineup. I don't know if it's because of the NFL. I don't know if it's because the NFL ruined him. I don't know if he grew up a big head in the NFL thinking, oh, I don't need the CFL, but, well, I'm back here anyway. I don't know if it's just because he's having struggles adapting from the NFL back over to the CFL. But he's not getting the job done. I think if BC can get their run game back with William Stanback, because William Stanback against Montreal had an outstanding game against them back in August. Had an outstanding game. I think BC, and with the fact that Montreal hasn't played very well out in the West Coast, out in Vancouver, I'm going to go with the upset here. I'm going to go with BC.
Very interesting with you going with the upset of the BC Lions, especially with the stat lines and things that you have brought up for this game and for this team previously. I just cannot go against the Alouettes. And based on what we've seen from the Lions, and I've picked them many times to win this year, and they have proven me wrong. And watch, they'll prove me wrong by proving that they're going to win against this Alouettes team. I'm going to pick the Alouettes to win, improve to 13-3-1, and the Lions fall to 8-10 to fall flat on their face to end the year like they have the past few months. The past 90 days have been terrible to watch, and I, for one, am happy that we don't have to see it anymore after today.
You forgot to add. You forgot to add before you made your pick. You forgot to say, for the sake of debate.
Oh yeah,
I'm going to pick the Montreal Alouettes.
Yes, but you know as much as I know from that when I do that normally on the Inter Out Sports Debate.
Yes,
that I'm doing that just because I'm going for the other team. I'm going for the other pick. But I'm actually being legitimately sincere in this. I'm not saying that because it's for the sake of debate.
No.
And I feel like the Lions are going to win. I mean, you have a great choice there, but based on everything I said, like, I just don't see, after what we've witnessed the past 90 days, as much of on a roll as this Alouettes team is. Alouettes lose the BC Lions in this game, they are not winning the Grey Cup. Oh, that's all I'm going to say. Especially after the fact that you brought up earlier, they beat them in their last contest, but the Lions were a more competitive team at that point. They have won 3 games in the last 3 months. There has been nothing that has really stood out to me is that they are a true competitive team in the playoffs right now. And it all stems with who they've got driving the bus at quarterback. They made the mistake there with Vernon Adams Jr. If he was the quarterback, and he was Vernon Adams Jr. before week 9, I would give it to you. If he was playing, and if he was playing at the MVP caliber level, but he is not doing that. Nathan Rourke is definitely not doing that. And for that reason being alone, I cannot go with them. I have to go with the team that's proven themselves to me all year long. And for the sake of my sanity, I'm going with the BC Lions to lose this game.
That's fair. That's fair. No, you brought up all great points between their Lions' inconsistency and Montreal's dominance this year. I totally understand your pick.
And your pick's not a bad one either. I could see it going that way. I mean, I'm used to coming back the next week and saying I was wrong. But here and now, if I had to have a gun to my head moment to pick a team, I'm going with the Lions to lose. And speaking of picks, we have one last thing to do, and that is go to the post game.
Total Football Talk Extra.
As long as it's one. It's great. I love it. I hope it actually is recording. Listening to it.
It is now that time that we go into the post game, give our final thoughts between week 19 into week 20 and what we're going to see this weekend. With that being said, let's take it to Mr. McCarthy for his final thoughts in this program.
So I'm going to shift my focus from the CFL to the NFL for this post game thoughts. NFL, we got to talk about officiating. What I witnessed on Monday night was nothing short of awful things. This game was competitive. This game was a competitive game between my New York Jets and the Buffalo Bills. And I'm not complaining about the loss. Like the Jets have bigger things on their mind other than trying not to be a circus, which are turning out to be again. Good Lord. But when you have these penalties racking up for over 200 yards, like if you had Adrian Hill's officiating crew this week in your fantasy football league, you probably would have won that week because of all the penalty yards that were not accepted in this game. There were over 190 yards that were accepted in penalties and over 200 yards total. And there were some egregious calls in this game on both sides of the ball. The roughing the passer called on AJ Epinesa on Aaron Rodgers because of his weight coming down, because of the fact that he put too much weight on driving Rodgers down to the ground. And even Rodgers was, and even you can see on the replay too, even Rodgers said to Epinesa when he was walking back to the huddle, it's a bad call, man. It's a tough call. Kinlaw's roughing the passer penalty on Josh Allen. the holding penalty on Joe Tippmann on the Jets' final drive, which went from a third down and 8, which was a converted first down, 3 seconds, a full 3 seconds after Breece Hall gets the first down, penalty flag is thrown. There's a holding call on Joe Tippmann. NFL, you need to clean up your act. I've been harping on Victory Monday and on no credentials required over the last 2 years about about officiating in the NFL. It needs to be full-time. You cannot have part-timers as referees in this league. You cannot have guys who work day jobs as insurance salesmen, as gym teachers, and as we know with Adrian Hill, he's a software engineer in his time outside of the game of football. No more of this crap. You need full-time referees who know the rules, who can interpret the rules correctly, and who can enforce the rules correctly too. Because this game on Monday seemed like it would never end. It seemed like it would never end between all the penalties that were thrown, all the flags that were thrown on the field. There was more laundry on the field than the towel guy doing towels in the BC Lions locker room as the aforementioned towel guy. All right. NFL, and we're going to see apology. And look, I've seen bad calls in my day. We had numerous bad calls in this game. And again, I'm not complaining because of my New York Jets, but it happened on both sides of the ball where we had egregiously bad penalties called against the Buffalo Bills as well. We're going to see it through the entire season where penalties get called early in the year and we get to later in the year. It's kind of like the NHL officiating where they just let the players play on unless there's something obvious and something that's so everybody can see like it's a penalty. Otherwise, these games are just going to drag out forever. Not because they're high scoring, but because every other play we see a flag on the field. This is not football. This is not good football. This is bad for the league. And if you want your league to excel, I mean, other than getting rid of the Thursday night games, which are also just awful as well. Case in point, last night's game between Saints and Broncos, that was terrible. Your officiating has to change. It has to be full time. It has to be with guys who know the rules, or guys and gals in this case. It have to know the rules and can interpret the rules well and can figure out what's a holding call, what's not a holding call, what's pass interference, what's not pass interference. If it's an obvious call, it's an obvious call. But if it's something that needs to be reviewed in the offseason with the competition committee, do it. If it's something that needs to be figured out between the league and the referees association, figure it out. We need full-time refs. We need people who can get in there and interpret the rules correctly and who don't delay the game. Because what happens in baseball? We all know who Joe West is. We all know who Angel Hernandez is. Fortunately, Angel Hernandez is gone. Praise the Lord. We don't want to know who the referees are. We don't want to know who the officiating crew is. They're not the ones who should be determining the outcome of the game. The players should. And when you let the referees decide the outcome of a game, that's when your product turns to crap and makes everyone put their tinfoil hats on and makes them think they got money on this game. And it turns it into conspiracy theory corner. I don't like conspiracy theory corner because today's conspiracy theories are tomorrow's news these days.
Yes.
So NFL, figure the rules out, please. Please figure these rules out because the game turns to crap. And that's my final. That is my final thoughts.
And basically, with that, you get into the Tim Donaghy discussions for the NBA from back in the day. We've already got enough stuff going on with Thomas Edward Patrick Brady II and his ownership with the Raiders, a minority ownership, and the restrictions with him being in the media as a result of that. So you already got enough going on out there from the past with referees and betting on games to all this stuff within the media and combination of ownership. You need to figure this out. You need to figure it out fast because it's not looking good when you have part-time referees who have been well known for being like lawyers or judges or whatever and getting out there. And this is not even their main gig. They need to have referees out there. Their main gig is this, and they are 1,000% invested into it. And then you can police that a little bit better if you have it all in-house than if you do have people coming in third party. But so I get your take right there, and I understand it very well. And I feel for you in your debacle with the Jets as well. And hopefully the most recent trade helps out, because we already know that they mortgaged their future pretty much with the moves they've made over the past couple seasons. It's make or break for the Jets right now. So hopefully things can pan out for them.
Score update. It's 6-0 Hamilton. They scored a touchdown.
Oh, Tiger Kitties making their mark. Making their mark here at the end. But speaking of making a mark, I'm gonna stay outside of CFL as well for this too, like my man McCarthy did. I'm gonna stick with the NFL for a part of what I'm gonna say, and then we're gonna wrap it up and go home, because I got one more show I gotta do here in a little bit that I've been putting off for several days and have now put it off a couple times a day because of things have happened, just so we can make everything work. Which I'm not complaining, just working with what I got. Commies, they lost last week to the Ravens. They do have a pretty easier matchup this weekend against the Panthers, but I just want to say I hope they do not take them lightly, because they were competitive with the Falcons recently. And, if you look at any team as an easy win or an easy day, it's more than likely going to go sideways on you real quick. So everybody stay healthy for the Commanders. Play very well in this week against the Panthers. Because next week I will be there, and I do not want to see anybody get hurt. Yes. And I'm hoping it should be 5-2 going into that game, as they push that game back to 4:00. It's a 4:25 game. It was a 1:00 game. So for myself, I'm excited because I don't have to get up as early. Thanks. So not getting up at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning to meet up with my guy around 7 to make the trip up there, and get up around 9, 10 o'clock and leave and go. Still get there at a decent time, tailgate for a couple hours before we go into the game. So with that being said, just wanted to give a message out to the commies. Please stay healthy. I even got a hat and a hoodie in the mail the other day. And I've been rocking all the old stuff, because you already know what's all on here, Mr. McCarthy. Okay. And I got the old retro swag, but just don't want to go in there and deal with any snowflakes. So I got a Commander's hoodie and a Commander's hat with the W on it. That's all I'm doing. That's all I'm purchasing. Not purchasing anything else, because I already have enough. Staying loyal to the past and what could come back. But for the first game, as a fan of the Commanders, to be in there as a fan, I went there once a couple of years ago as part of the media during their first year as the Commanders, but not been there as a fan yet. So the tables have turned. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to a good time, but also looking forward to another good time next Friday on Total Football Talk. More than likely next week, there will only be one show on Sartoba Media next week, and that will be this at its regular time, because I will be going to work that night. I just know based on the schedule, I will be working. So trying to get things in gear to get Commander's Gridiron Report back to you on Tuesdays, but working with work balance and life, just got to make it work however possible. And this is more important to be here at the time than that. So when it comes to that, I just wanted to give you guys a heads up at that. I gave you the heads up earlier that you will see a new wrestling show, The Grind, tomorrow on Sartoba Media. I want to give a shout out to those of you watching on Ryan's channels, whether it be on his Twitter or on his No Credentials Required podcast channel. I hope I can get back up there with you guys, with you and Dustin here pretty soon, because spoiler alert, not next week, but the week after, I will be on PTO. So if you guys have an opening on No Credentials Required, I got an opening right now on Tuesday, whether it's Tuesday or Wednesday, or even if you're recording that night, like on tonight's, what you're normally doing, dropping in the there now so it starts stewing. And if you don't have any guests on there, bring me on up there. We got some things to get caught up on, and
Yeah,
we
we do.
shall throw it down. But if we
Awesome.
can't, we'll make it work some other time. But with our final takes in the show, just wanted to throw that out there. Thank you to everybody, Sick Diggy, who's been in the comments, Ike, who jumped in for a minute, and those of you who watched this after it's live, if you could, no matter where you're watching it, on Ryan's platforms or mine, please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. And be sure to tune in each and every week, as both Ryan and I have some great things to come out each and every week for our networks. For Mr. McCarthy, who has one more thing to say.
I have one more thing to say. We're dropping a new podcast on the No Credentials Required channel this week. It's going to be called the Three Rails Metro Hockey Report. It's myself, a couple other guys. I'm a New Jersey Devils fan. Got one guy who is an Islanders fan, New York Islanders fan, one guy who is a New York Rangers fan. We're going to talk about all three of our teams respectively, and it'll be on podcast form starting on Monday. We're going to record on Sunday night, and we'll have it released on Monday morning. So if you're a fan of hockey, especially those three teams, check us out. We'd appreciate it.
So, is it just going to be on like Spotify and stuff? You're going to have it on the YouTube
everywhere.
channel? Okay, cool.
We're going to have the YouTube channel as well.
It's just not going to be live. It's going to be recorded.
Oh, we're recorded. Yep. Awesome.
Now, is it anybody that you have worked with previously on here? Like, do you have some new talent that's coming on there?
No, our buddy, our buddy Dan, who, aka Staniel Smooth from the Time to BS podcast, he'll be on there. He's been a past guest on No Credentials Required. He's going to join this one. And Brian, who is a Rangers fan, he's a local guy too. He's in the same local area as myself. He's a Rangers fan. He'll be starting with us as well. So, yeah, looking forward to it. I'm excited about this project, and we'll hoping people will listen to it.
Well, I look forward to it, my man. I will definitely tune in and check it out. Let you know what I think of it. I'm not as big into hockey as I am with like football and baseball and even basketball to an extent, but I do like watching it. I do like the impact. I'm more so the type of fan of hockey that likes to watch around playoff time. Yeah. So, but I'm down to check out a podcast and see how it is and give my 2 cents on it. But speaking of podcasts, this one has now gotten to the point where we get to look at one more thing, and that is one badass outro from our man, Cole Johnson. Shout out to him and his executive producer work. Shout out to this guy here and the work that he does with this show and in others. And I never do this, but shout out to myself for waking up today.
Yeah, shout out to you, Drew. Good job.
We've all done great things, and we'll do it again together. Tune in next week for episode 8. And as always, stay safe out here in these streets. You don't have to go home, but you got to get your cell phone up out of here. One last thing. The Commander's Gridiron Report will be on tonight in 30 minutes, 8:05 p.m. Eastern Time. I will see you then. Stay safe out here in these streets.